Picture this: December 13th, 1981, Shawbury in Shropshire. Your thermometer reads -25 degrees Celsius, the coldest December temperature ever recorded in England. And this wasn't just one brutal night. This was the beginning of 7 weeks that would test Britain like nothing since 1963, the big snow of 1982. From early December through to mid-January, Britain fought against ice that cracked windows, snow that buried entire villages, and cold that got into your bones. For those who lived through it, the memory isn't just of the cold. It's of neighbours appearing with shovels, strangers sharing coal, and discovering what really matters when everything freezes over. It began quietly in early December 1981. The month had started mild. Aberdeen recorded 15 degrees on the 3rd. People walked around in light coats. Winter felt like it might skip Britain entirely. But on December 7th, everything changed. The wind veered northerly. Arctic air swept down from Scandinavia. And by the morning of the 8th, heavy snow had fallen across southern England. 15 centimetres in Wiltshire and Berkshire. The roads became ice rinks overnight. Airports shut, trains stopped, telephone lines came down, and nobody had been warned properly. Thousands of people set off for work that morning and found themselves stranded. Cars abandoned in ditches, buses giving up halfway up hills. The morning commute became a 7-hour nightmare. The cold gripped tighter. By December 11th, another blizzard hit. This time London took the worst of it. 25 to 30 centimetres of snow piled up in the suburbs. Parliament struggled to function. The Queen herself got stranded for hours in a Cotswold pub. Nobody was spared. And then came December 13th, the night Britain truly froze. Temperatures plummeted below -18 across huge parts of the country. Shawbury recorded -25.2, England's coldest December temperature ever. Wales hit -22.7 at Corwin. Records that had stood for over a century shattered in a single night. 2 ships sank in the English Channel that week. Gale-force winds turned snow into blinding storms at sea. Sea defences were breached along the Bristol Channel, and on December 19th, tragedy struck off the Cornish coast. The Penly lifeboat capsized, trying to rescue a damaged cargo ship. 16 lives lost. The sea claiming brave men who'd gone out into a storm that should never have been faced. Britain mourned, but the cold didn't care. It just kept coming. The cold didn't just arrive, it took over. Your breath froze mid-air. Ice formed on the inside of windows. Not frost patterns you could scrape away. Thick ice you'd need a knife to remove. And in the morning, waking up meant preparing yourself. The bedroom was a freezer, the bathroom worse. Getting dressed meant moving fast. Central heating was a luxury most families didn't have. You relied on one coal fire downstairs, one room with heat. The rest of the house became Arctic. Families huddled together in the living room, wearing every jumper they owned, blankets wrapped around shoulders, hands reaching toward flames that barely warmed you unless you sat right beside them. At night, going to bed meant diving under heavy blankets, sometimes 4 or 5 layers. Your clothes for tomorrow laid out at the foot of the bed, because leaving them in a drawer meant putting on frozen fabric. Some people slept in their coats, not because they were poor, because it was the only way to survive the night without hypothermia. The snow kept coming. December 20th brought more, then the 27th, wave after wave. By Christmas Day, snow lay 33 centimetres deep around Lincoln, 10 inches in North London. And the problem wasn't just the snow, it was the cold. Temperatures stayed below freezing for weeks. The snow didn't melt, it piled up, layer upon layer, week after week. Rivers froze solid, harbours iced over. Parts of the southern coast saw the sea itself freeze, ice blocks left on beaches when the tide went out, fishing boats trapped, and inland roads vanished under drifts that reached 6 metres in some places, entire villages cut off, no deliveries, no post, no way in or out. Your mum probably started stockpiling in early December. Tinned food, extra bread, bottles of milk lined up because the fridge couldn't hold them all. Running out wasn't an option. The shops were closing, roads blocked. If you forgot something, you did without, or you knocked on a neighbour's door and hoped they had spare. Getting to the shops became an expedition. Queues formed outside bakeries first thing in the morning. People waiting an hour just for a loaf of bread. Shelves emptied fast. Sugar disappeared. Butter rationed by shopkeepers who knew their regulars. And if you lived in a village cut off by snow, you relied on whatever you'd stored. Some families went 2 weeks without fresh milk. Tinned condensed milk in tea became normal. The taste of making do. Power cuts happened constantly. Over 250,000 homes lost electricity during December. Snow and ice on overhead lines caused failures, short circuits, and when the power went, everything stopped. No heating, no light, just candles and coal fires. Families sat in the dark, playing cards, telling stories, trying to stay warm until the electricity flickered back on hours later. Schools closed, not for a day or two, for weeks in some areas. Children thought Christmas had come early. Freedom, no lessons, just endless snow and the chance to build fortresses that lasted until New Year. Sledges appeared from every shed and garage. Tea trays stolen from kitchens. Baking sheets borrowed without asking. Anything that could slide. Every street had its sledging hill, protected like territory. The best runs were taken early. Kids spent entire days racing down, trudging back up, soaking wet but grinning. Your clothes soaked through, your gloves stiff with ice, but nobody cared. This was the winter of a lifetime. Snow so deep you walked on top of hedges and gates, drifts taller than adults. But behind the fun, life was hard. Elderly people struggled. Hypothermia cases flooded hospitals. Doctors trudged through waist-deep snow making house calls, their bags frozen solid, trying to reach patients who couldn't reach them. Some roads stayed blocked for days. Helicopters dropped supplies to isolated farms, bread, medicine, essentials. Farmers watched helplessly as livestock froze in fields, sheep buried under drifts, cattle unable to move. By the time January came, thousands of animals had been lost. The financial cost devastating, but farmers didn't complain. They simply got on with it, because that's what you did. As December ended, people hoped the worst was over. A brief mild spell on New Year's Day, rain instead of snow. Things started melting, relief spread, but it was a trick. The cold returned on January 3rd, heavier, meaner, and this time it brought something worse. January 7th, 1982. Snow began falling that evening across Wales. Not a light dusting, not a passing shower. This was a blizzard, and it didn't stop. For 36 hours, snow kept falling, relentless, driven by gale-force easterly winds. Temperatures hovered between -2 and -4. The snow was dry, powdery, and the wind moved it everywhere. By the morning of January 9th, much of Wales lay buried, 60 centimetres of level snow across Glamorgan and Monmouthshire. But the drifts were the real horror. 6 metres high in exposed areas, 20 feet of snow piled up by the wind. Cars disappeared completely. Houses became igloos. Gates and hedges vanished under white walls. South Wales was cut off for 3 days. Roads blocked, railways stopped, airports shut. Millions of people couldn't get to work. London commuters gave up after hours of trying. The Midlands ground to a halt, and in Wales, entire towns became islands, isolated, waiting for rescue. The army arrived, troops with shovels, clearing roads 1 metre at a time, delivering bread and milk to villages that hadn't seen a delivery van in 2 weeks. Helicopters buzzed overhead, dropping supplies, lifting out people who needed medical help. It was a military operation, and it took days. In Swansea, locals listened to Swansea Sound Radio all day. The station became a lifeline, coordinating help, broadcasting appeals. Anyone in a four-wheel drive free to pick up a lady in labour? Mrs. Jones has run out of bread. Can someone deliver? People responded. Strangers with Land Rovers became heroes. Farmers opened their homes to stranded motorists. And in Horton, villagers lived without electricity for days. No heat, hardly any food. Helicopters dropping bread from above. People walking on top of the snow higher than the gates below. Cut off completely. But they survived. Your mum boiled water for washing, a kettle and a bowl, no baths, no showers, just a flannel and lukewarm water that turned cold before you finished. Your dad kept checking the coal supply, calculating how long it would last, burning anything else that would catch, old newspapers, broken furniture, anything to keep the fire alive. And then January 10th. The coldest morning Britain had ever recorded. Braemar in Scotland hit minus 27.2 degrees Celsius, equaling the UK's all-time record set in 1895. But England wasn't far behind. Newport in Shropshire recorded minus 26.1, the coldest temperature ever recorded in England, ever in over 300 years of records. That afternoon, Braemar's maximum temperature reached minus 19.1. Think about that. The warmest it got all day was nearly 20 degrees below freezing. People who went outside described the air as sharp, like breathing glass. Your lungs ached, your face burned, exposed skin turned numb in seconds. As far south as Wiltshire, daytime temperatures stayed below minus 10 on January 13th. Thick fog covered the country. Visibility dropped to meters. Roads became death traps. Cars skidded. Lorries crashed. And still, somehow, people tried to carry on. The postman still made his rounds. Milkmen still delivered, because that's what you did. But here's what nobody tells you about the big snow of 1982. It wasn't just about survival. It was about community. When the snow buried your street, people came out to help. Strangers dug out cars together. The elderly were checked on daily. Families shared what they had. In church halls and community centres, people gathered, not just for warmth, but for company. You'd sit with folk you'd never met, drinking tea, playing dominoes, sharing stories. The cold changed everything. When everyone's freezing, asking for help wasn't embarrassing. It was necessary, and giving it felt natural. The BBC reported the chaos calmly. Severe weather continues. Motorists are advised to take care. No panic, no drama, just quiet acknowledgement that yes, it's dreadful, but we'll manage. We always do. By mid-January, the cold finally loosened its grip. Warmer air crept in from the west. Snow began melting. Roads reappeared. Railways cleared. And Britain, tired, frost-bitten, and covered in soot, began breathing again. When the milk arrived unfrozen for the first time in weeks, people actually cheered. The post came through. Life slowly returned to normal. The big snow of 1982 wasn't just about record temperatures, it was about people. When supplies ran low, Britain didn't break. Neighbours looked after each other. Strangers helped. Families sat by one fire, actually talking, actually together. We had less back then, but somehow it felt like more. If this brought back memories, share your story in the comments and share it with someone who will remember. Were you trapped in the snow? Did your school close for weeks? Do you remember walking on top of buried cars? Please subscribe to my channel to keep these memories alive.